ago, we talked about the live service problem, the way games stopped asking whether they were good and started asking whether they were surviving. I said at the end of that video that Marathon deserved its own conversation, that the story of how we got there was bigger than a chapter. This is that conversation. You've felt it before. You just didn't have a name for it then. That jump, that specific way your character hangs in the air just a beat longer than physics should allow. The way a headshot communicates through the input. The way an encounter gives you breathing room and punishes you for standing still. Load into Halo, load into Destiny, load into Marathon. Your hands already knew who made this. That feeling has survived 30 years, 3 acquisitions, multiple genre shifts, a studio that kept saying it wanted to make something different. That last part is where this gets interesting. Bungie told us they were bored, not privately, not in a leaked memo. Jason Jones, co-founder of Bungie, the man who built Marathon and led Halo Combat Evolved, said publicly before any of this existed that he did not want to make sequels. His reasoning was direct. Publishers make sequels because they made money on the first one. They keep making similar games until everyone gets sick of them. He said that before Halo, before 2001, before any of this mattered. Then Halo sold systems. And the man who hated sequels made Halo 2, then ODST, then Reach, then left to make Destiny, Destiny 2, then Marathon. This is not a story about a studio that failed. This is a story about a studio that could not stop repeating itself no matter how hard it tried. And the irony sitting at the center of it all is that the thing they kept repeating, the thing they built so deeply it survived everything they threw at it, is the exact thing that could save the game they just launched, if they would only use it. In 1962, a British author named Michael Moorcock published a novel called The Eternal Champion. One warrior, reborn across infinite parallel universes, always summoned to fight the same war under a different name. Different countries, different worlds, different weapons, the same soul answering the same call. He does not choose to be summoned, he just hears it and follows. Most incarnations never remember their other lives. They just know they were made to fight. Now, inside Marathon 2, there is a terminal, a voice that claims to have been Roland, Beowulf, Achilles, and Gilgamesh. The same figure, different names, different eras, one war. Bungie put that archetype inside their own game, not as a wink or of a statement. The game told you what its protagonist was. You just had to read the walls. And if we look at what came after, Marathon, a security guard on a colony ship. Aliens attack. You fight. Halo, a Spartan pulled from cryosleep. Aliens attack. You fight. Destiny, a guardian resurrected from death. Multiple alien races arrive. You fight. Marathon 2026. Runners navigating a broken future colony. Something wrong underneath everything. You fight. It's the same studio, different centuries, different settings, same soldier every time. And I'm not telling you all of this, dear viewer, as a fun observation. In Destiny's loot pool, there is an exotic helmet for Titans called the Eternal Warrior. It's not a reference to Destiny's own lore, it's a callback. A wink from the studio to anyone that was paying attention. This is the same legend told in a different century. This is the same call being answered. Bungie knew what they were doing, and they named it. So when Jason Jones said that he was tired of making Halo and then made Destiny, He was not lying about the feeling. He was just wrong about the escape route. Because Destiny has that same floaty jump, that same crisp gameplay, weapons that feel like Halo's descendants, even wrapped in magic and alien mythology. The double jumps and the warlocks and the Titan fists do not change what the sandbox feels like in your hands. Your hands already knew. This is the hypocrisy at the center of everything. It's not malice and not laziness. It's a studio so fluent in one specific feeling that they cannot stop speaking it even when they are trying to say something else. That fluency is almost the most valuable thing that they own, which is what makes what they did with Marathon so frustrating. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. November 15th, 2001, 6 weeks after the world had changed. If you know, you know. Microsoft launched the Xbox. My dad came home, I remember that day. That evening with 2 games just tucked under his arm. Madden NFL 2002 for him, and Halo Combat Evolved for me. I don't remember exactly how long he was gone for, I just remember him standing up after we watched the news detailing the Xbox's arrival. He told me he would be right back, and sometime later that evening he came back, and we had an Xbox. Here is what that console launch meant beyond my living room.
We're unveiling the Xbox.
Microsoft was a software company that arrived late to a market Sony and Nintendo already owned. They needed a game that proved their hardware deserved to exist. Bungie, which had been building Halo as a Mac title before Microsoft acquired them in 2000, became the studio that carried that weight. Around 60 people responsible for the Xbox being taken seriously. And, well, Halo sold systems. That's not a metaphor either. And the studio that made it became, in the eyes of Microsoft and the industry, synonymous with a specific feeling: scale, precision, controlled chaos in a first-person shooter. That identity would follow them everywhere they went. Everywhere I went that particular year, somebody had Halo. We would play split screen until controllers were warm. I would go home and rerun the campaign on easy, then normal, heroic, and then eventually legendary. The silent cartographer had a direction you were supposed to go, and a completely different one if you ignored all of that. That sense of a world that did not need you to follow its instructions meant everything when you had one game, and that game was your whole library. It was around 2012 I moved fully to PC. Diablo 1 was the first game I had ever played in my life, and Diablo 3 was dropping that year, and that was it. I had Warframe, Counter-Strike, Dota 2, and Dark Souls was not going to be a PS3 only title, but it was going to launch everywhere. I had everything I needed on a keyboard. The only Halo available to me was Halo Custom Edition, a community-maintained PC port with mods and custom maps that kept the game alive on GameSpy servers long past what anyone expected. Then, in 2014, Destiny launched. Console only. And I heard about it the way you hear about something that's not built for you. Sounds good. Good for them. What I was missing was the foundation of what Bungie had been building during the years between leaving Halo and shipping Destiny. The leaked Activision contract, which became public through court documents in 2012, described a MMO FPS, a shared world where you would live in rather than visit. 4 main games across 10 years. The ambition was enormous, bigger than anything they had attempted. The development was brutal. The story that shipped was not the story that was written. Joseph Staten, one of the lead writers, departed mid-development. What players got was a game where the actual context for the world lived on a separate website called the Grimoire. You had to leave the game to understand the game. Hollow walls, but extraordinary bones. And people played it anyway, because the bones were just that good. There was a weapon that floated around in the community that, even as a non-Destiny 1 player, I heard about secondhand. That weapon is called the Gjallarhorn. It's an exotic rocket launcher so dominant that raid groups would require it in LFG posts. Xur, the weekly exotic vendor, sold it in week 2 when the community had not yet figured out what it was. Nobody bought it, and almost a full year passed before he sold it again. By the time that second sale came, people understood exactly what they had missed. That gap, that year of learning what the weapon meant before you could have it, is an experience you cannot manufacture. The game teaching its own mythology through absence. That is what I never got to have with Destiny 1. Destiny 2 came to Battle.net in October of 2017. Blizzard shared their infrastructure as sister companies under Activision because building a new PC network client from scratch would have extended development significantly. It was the first non-Blizzard game ever on that platform as far as I'm aware. I remember at the time I was working my first week as a cashier at Tommy Hilfiger. I was dead from the grind every day, but before I left for work that Friday morning, I had bought Destiny 2 and installed it. I only had time to make my character and get through the opening before I had to leave. I spent that entire shift just thinking about getting home. I pulled my gaming laptop at the time off the coffee table. I opened some snacks and cracked an energy drink open. And, dear viewer, when I tell you that entire weekend I did not move, I mean it. Nothing else in the market ever felt like that. I had not played a Bungie title in years, and I came home to something that felt like a conversation I did not know I had been waiting to have. For those of you paying attention in the last episode, I have about 6,000 something hours on Steam alone. So when I say Bungie means something to me, that is not a casual statement, which is what makes the next part so necessary for me to say. Vanilla Destiny 2, which launched in 2017, was not very good. The weapon system was restructured in ways that felt like a step backward. The endgame was very thin, and the Eververse story was more prominent than it had any right to be at a full price. The sense that this world rewarded curiosity, which Destiny 1 had earned over 3 years, was mostly absent. Destiny 2, in its first year, was alive, but it was sick. Curse of Osiris, by the studio's own admission, was a waking call for them, a time where, if they didn't shape up, the game would have to shut down. The Whisper of the Worm exotic mission and Forsaken just a few weeks later came out in September of 2018, and the game found what it was supposed to be. Cade 6 died in the opening mission, and people who had never touched Destiny knew about it, because the response was just that loud. The Dreaming City unfolded over months, the mechanics were rebuilt, and people came back. Then Activision went on an earnings call in November of 2018 and said Forsaken had not met their commercial expectations. Destiny 2 director Luke Smith got on Twitter the same day and said, "We are not disappointed with Forsaken. We set out to build a game that Destiny players love, and at Bungie, we love it too." It was a line in the sand, Bungie and the community on one side, and the publisher on the other. Activision's COO gave 3 reasons for the split. 1. Destiny was not going to materially contribute to operating income in 2019. 2. Activision did not own the Destiny IP, which limited their ability to build revenue around it. And 3. Having internal Activision developers supplementing Bungie's work was tying up resources they needed elsewhere. Bungie approached them about ending the deal, and by January 2019, 5 years early on a 10-year contract, it was done. Everyone drank the Kool-Aid. But here's what freedom actually looked like. The seasonal model expanded, the content vault arrived and took paid expansions offline. The thing you purchased became inaccessible. The Eververse, which the community had blamed on Activision for years, did not shrink, and now there was nobody else to point at. Because here is what Bungie proved when they went independent. The problem was never entirely the publisher. Some of it was, sure. Most of the Eververse expansion, most of the seasonal churn, that was a studio that had learned to monetize its audience and found that the publisher leaving did not change the appetite for that revenue. What changed is who was accountable for it. In January 2022, Sony acquired Bungie for a measly $3.6 billion. The studio that fought for independence from Microsoft, that made 3 Halo games it did not want to make to earn the right to even leave, that split from Activision mid-contract, just to be bought by a platform holder for $3.6 billion in a mandate to help PlayStation build a live service portfolio. Not bought to keep making Destiny indefinitely, bought as an institution of knowledge. Destiny and Marathon were the proof of concept for what Bungie could teach PlayStation about making live service games work. Post-acquisition, Bungie expanded aggressively. Hundreds of new hires, multiple unannounced projects running alongside Destiny and Marathon simultaneously. And management, according to reporting by Jason Schreier at Bloomberg, expected what they internally called Bungie Magic to carry them through an expansion that was too large, too fast. It did not. Revenue from Destiny 2 fell about 45% in a single year, and in October of 2023, roughly 100 people laid off. Then, in 2024, a second round. One unannounced new IP transferred out of Bungie entirely to a new PlayStation studio. The creative studios arm of Bungie folded into PlayStation Studios directly. And just for those keeping track, when the creative arm of a studio gets absorbed into the parent company, the studio is no longer operating independently in any meaningful sense. The independence Bungie spent 30 years fighting for had been eroded from the inside by the weight of a $3.6 billion acquisition and the expectations that come with it. History repeats itself. Every damn time. Every room they escape into looks exactly like the one they left. So when we ask, why is there no Destiny 3? It's because Destiny 3 requires admitting Destiny 2 is finished. Sony spent $3.6 billion on a live service franchise. A new numbered entry means starting from zero on the player investment that keeps existing revenue flowing. So, there is no Destiny 3. There is a game kept alive past its natural conclusion because the alternative is more expensive than anyone is going to tell you. The final shape launched in June of 2024 and became one of the best bits of Destiny content since Forsaken. The Witness was defeated. A 10-year saga reached a real conclusion, and what came after felt like the light staying on in an empty building. And so Bungie needed Marathon to be the answer to everything. The new franchise, the proof they could still create something, the thing that justified the acquisition. That is an enormous amount of weight to put on a game that, as of a year before launch, still did not know what to charge. Marathon launched last month in March of 2026, $40. Getting to that number was not straightforward. There were reports of 60, 70, even free-to-play floated around publicly for months. A PC Gamer article from April of 2025, almost a year before launch, ran the headline, "I'm convinced Bungie won't say how much Marathon will cost because it doesn't know how much to charge yet." That is actually not a criticism from the outside. That is literally the product communicating something about itself. A game that cannot articulate its own price point a year out is a game still working out what it is. What settled it, at least partly, was competition. Arc Raiders entered the conversation, a capable AA extraction shooter built by a smaller studio completely in the same space. Bungie had to price with that reality in mind. The game launched with one mode, Extraction, and 4 maps. And before launch, Bungie asked reviewers to hold off on publishing reviews until they had experienced the full game, including the pinnacle endgame content, Cryo Archive. I just want to be precise about this because it is genuinely unprecedented. They were not asking for a standard embargo until launch day. They were asking critics to gain experience with the product, to see everything it had to offer before forming a verdict. No other studio in my memory, or at least in my reasonable expectations, have ever made a request like that. The implicit admission in that request is that the first impression of the game was not the impression they wanted critics to lead with. That is a studio that knew the surface was not enough. The game was also going to launch without proximity chat, the feature that makes extraction shooters feel alive. The tense standoffs with strangers, the accidental alliances, the chaotic last-second negotiations. It took Arc Raiders running a public server the same week as Marathon's closed beta, a beta where you couldn't share anything publicly, to pressure Bungie into adding it. A competitor's open test showed the company what that feature felt like, and Marathon had to respond. And before release, Bungie had intended to let players customize their runners the way Destiny lets you customize Guardians. That system was changed to a hero-centric model. Fixed runners, fixed identities, which created a fundamental ceiling on the cosmetics. In an extraction shooter, you need to identify a class from 100 meters. Visual readability is survival. You cannot make a thief look dramatically different from another thief without compromising that. Bungie made a design decision that locked them into a cosmetic problem they are probably not going to solve, at least not at the time of this recording. The thief's first major rotation was a recolored puffer jacket, yellow instead of whatever shade you can put it in. It's not a new design at all. It's not a new silhouette, it's literally just a reskin. A weapon charm, a sticker. These are the cosmetics of a game that cannot express itself visually, and it's trying to sell that limitation at premium prices 3 months at a time. And then I just want to talk about the actual problem here. Marathon feels like Destiny. It feels like Halo. The sandbox is unmistakably Bungie. The weight of weapons through the input, the movement with its own momentum and hang, the encounters that give you space and punish complacency. You know immediately who made this game. That is simultaneously the best thing I can say about it and the sharpest indictment of what it is not doing with that foundation. Bungie built a Ferrari and entered it in a rock climbing competition, essentially. Extraction shooters are the hardcore ARPG of the shooter genre. Think Path of Exile on hardcore. Every run carries the weight of what you stand to lose. If you die, you lose that run, that gear, that time that you invested. The players who thrive in that format are already in Escape from Tarkov, Hunt Showdown, Arc Raiders. Those players already have homes. Meanwhile, Bungie has the most refined arena shooter sandbox in the genre's history. Destiny players have been asking for a dedicated PvP title for years because Crucible keeps getting deprioritized inside of a PvE-first live service game. Frostbolt, Aztecross, community voices who will tell you plainly that competitive Destiny feels like an afterthought in a game that built its reputation on multiplayer precision. Marathon could be the clean slate that Destiny never was. PvP first, built around the sandbox that nobody else in the industry can replicate. An arena mode where 30 years of refinement gets the stage it deserves without competing for development resources against a loot economy and a seasonal narrative. PvE modes alongside it for players who want the feel without the stakes. The AI in this game is genuinely impressive. It reminds me personally of Halo. Enemies that will use grenades, push you out of cover or flank and just adapt to what you're doing. They still have the rank and file enemies, the commanders, the elites, and even bosses. A firefight style mode with that AI gives casual players a reason to stay. And when they feel ready for extraction, the mode is right there. Instead, it launched as exclusively a hardcore extraction with a cosmetic store that can't support itself and a player base that announces it is done nearly every single day on Reddit or Twitter. And every time someone raises any of this, the response comes back, well, you got 100 hours out of a $40 game. That should be enough. It should not be enough. The question for a live service game is never whether you got value from the first 100 hours. It is whether there is a reason to log in on hour 101. And right now, for most players, there is not. Marathon survives if it becomes more than what it launched as. On a hardcore extraction base alone, against Sony's expectations from a $3.6 billion acquisition following 2 rounds of layoffs, it does not. Let me put this into a tune we can all hum to. Bungie said they were bored of making Halo. They made 3 more Halo games anyway. Left and made Destiny, a game that felt like Halo, with magic and alien mythology and a whole new fiction. Got pressured out of a deal with Activision when their best work wasn't profitable enough, and got acquired by Sony for a $3.6 billion acquisition. They expanded too fast, laid off hundreds of people, had their creative arm absorbed into the parent company structure, and launched Marathon. A game that plays like Destiny and Halo and every game that they have ever made, in a format that refuses to use the one thing nobody else in the industry can do. The situation keeps choosing for them. Jason Jones said it himself in 2013, almost without meaning to. The situation made part of the decision. He didn't fully choose, he just followed. Warcock's Eternal Champion doesn't choose the call either. It comes. He follows. Most incarnations never remember their other lives. They just know they were made for this. That terminal voice that says it has been Roland, Beowulf, Achilles, Gilgamesh, the same warrior, the same threshold, the same war. But you were dead 1,000 times. The thing Bungie has been trying to escape for 30 years is also the thing that makes every game they touch feel like no one else made it. That is not a limitation, that's inheritance. And right now, they are sitting on the most valuable sandbox in the first-person shooter genre, inside a game that almost launched without proximity chat, with a hero model that cannot support meaningful cosmetics, asking players whether 100 hours was enough. It was not enough. Not because the game failed, but because the game is still trying to figure out what it is, just like I said in the last video. I also mentioned I don't think Marathon is over. I think it's a question mark that cost $40 and has one chance to become the thing it should have launched as. The people making it know how to make games feel like no one else can. The question is whether the structure around them, Sony's expectations, the acquisition wait, the 2 rounds of layoffs, the creative arm now folded into the parent company, leaves them enough room to make that call themselves instead of following the situation into another room that looks exactly like the last one. Bungie built something in '94, and they have not stopped building it since. That soldier that keeps being summoned, the call that keeps coming. The difference this time is that war they were summoned to fight might actually be the one worth winning, if they would just use the weapon they already have. I am Agis. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone. I just want to say thank you so much for the kind messages on the first video. This is a learning process, and I still have a very long way to go. If you are new or just want to rewatch the previous video, there's a link down in the description that will take you just to it. There will be more soon. Until then, thank you for watching.